Hello all, thanks for joining us today. My name is Meg Howard. I'm a project manager at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. I work on renewable heating and cooling technologies, and I'm going to give an overview of the HeatSmart Mass pilot program today, and then a little bit of a deeper dive into the 4 eligible technologies. So just to start off with a little housekeeping, we're going to talk, like I said, start with an overview of the actual RFP program. We'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers after that. Because there are so many participants on the call today, we're going to limit it to written questions. And you should see a box on the right-hand side of your screen where you can type in questions at any point throughout the presentation. After we do the overview of the RFP, we'll go into a technology overview of each of the 4 eligible technologies: modern wood heat, air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, solar hot water, leaving a little bit of time at the end for some general questions and answers. If anyone is having any difficulty hearing me or any of this, please just type into the box on the right-hand side and let me know. So HeatSmart Mass is a group purchasing program that also includes community education for clean heating and cooling technologies. The target of this type of program is residential installations, although small commercial can also be a part of the program. It's a kind of program that relies very heavily on active community volunteers as well as municipal representatives. And it's based on our Solarized Mass program that Mass CEC has been running a while. The picture on the top right shows a Mass CEC Solarized Mass community group. And the one on the bottom shows a HeatSmart group in New York. It's kind of the first campaign of this type for heating, and we're following closely on their heels here in Massachusetts. So what is the group purchase model? The goals are to increase education and community outreach, simplify the process, reduce the installation costs, reduce time to contract, and hopefully increase adoption. And hopefully all of that leads to reduce costs, maybe on the equipment. Installers can buy in bulk. Soft costs should be reduced due to all the community outreach, and this leads to savings that can be passed along to the customers, offering them a discounted rate. So here's a little overview of the success we've had with the Solarized Mass program. It's been in over 18% of the communities in Massachusetts since Mass CEC started running this program in 2011. Overall, it's resulted in 3,200 contracts, 2,100 megawatts of capacity, and an average customer savings of 20% compared to the statewide average price for solar. So one of the goals of this HeatSmart Mass pilot is to see if we can replicate those same level of savings for the heating technologies that we're going to talk about today. So why are we targeting heating here? First big reason is that heating represents a third of Massachusetts greenhouse gas emissions, as well as our energy use. And for residential, for the typical home in Massachusetts, that's an even bigger share. If you look at space heating combined with water heating, you're talking about over 3/4 of the energy that a home uses. So if we can start to target that with clean and renewable energy, we're really making a big dent into the energy use and greenhouse gas emissions of a home. So in 2015, Mass CEC made a $30 million 5-year commitment to support rebates for these technologies. It's become a big priority for us, and this HeatSmart Mass pilot is one kind of manifestation of the focus on heating. It can also be a large dollar cost for households, the biggest energy cost, and especially for households that heat with high-cost heating fuels. So this map shows census tracts in the state that have a higher percentage of households that heat with either electricity, oil, or propane, some of the high-cost heating fuels. And these are the areas that we're thinking will have the best value proposition for the clean heating and cooling technologies and therefore the HeatSmart Mass campaign. This map is available on the HeatSmart Mass website, so you can go check it out and look at what your community how your community ranks on this map. A couple of notes I just wanted to make sure I address. I think a lot of people on the call today have done solarized mass or are familiar with it. It's fine if you're not, but just to make sure, I wanted to highlight a couple differences here. For the HeatSmart Mass program, we're getting our funding from a slightly different source. So that means that all towns and cities in Massachusetts are eligible, not just the ones that are served by utilities that pay into the Renewable Energy Trust. This is the pilot round of the program, as I've mentioned, so we're looking for 4 communities, but that could be also a group of kind of up to 4 municipalities that are partnering together when we talk about a community. Like I said, communities don't need to be have done solarized mass, nor do they need to be green communities. We are talking about 4 technologies that I'll go over in more detail, and each community or group of municipalities can pick which of those technologies they're interested in, so either just one or all 4 or kind of anywhere in between, whatever makes sense based on your community and some of the factors I'll talk about in a little bit. And one other thing I want to emphasize is that home energy audits will be an important part of this campaign. Since we're talking about heating, we really live by the mantra, efficiency first, that you should make your home as efficient as possible before you try and come in with a clean or renewable heat source. And finally, one thing I want to emphasize, when this RFP first went out, deadline was September 1st. That's now been moved back to September 15th. We got some feedback that people just need a little more time with August and the summer. So deadline is now September 15th. As I said, when I was describing the program, this is something that relies very heavily on volunteer work, support and buy-in from the municipal representative. So what is Mass CEC offering? This is a little rundown of kind of what we hope to bring and offer your community if you were to participate in this pilot program. Between our staff here, as well as technical consultants we'll bring into the effort, we will be the ones to actually issue this installer RFP. So once you select which technologies you're interested in, we'll put out the RFP, and then we'll contract with the selected installer. And the idea there is to reduce the burden on the municipalities for this pilot program. But the community volunteers and the municipalities will be very involved and have the ultimate say in selecting what installer makes sense for your community with technical guidance from Mass CEC and our consultant. We'll also help develop template marketing materials and some informational materials, talking points, and help you identify kind of what neighborhoods or areas in your town might be particularly good targets for the HeatSmart Mass campaign, and then provide a marketing budget for your volunteers to use kind of as makes sense in your town, if that's flyers, lawn signs, posters, kind of whatever makes sense in your community. And then we'll also be there to serve as a technical resource for the HeatSmart coach, the kind of head volunteer, as well as all other volunteers, and the municipal representative. Although for individual home installations, we do expect that the installer that we've all selected together will be a technical expert. So some timeline, the RFP went out on July 24th. We have a deadline to submit questions at the end of this month, August 30th. And we'll post answers to all questions we receive by September 6th. And then proposals are due Friday, September 15th. And more information is available at this website. And any questions can come into heatsmartmass@masscec.com. And I just wanted to take a quick minute to show you our website where we'll be posting questions just as a resource to all of you. So from our homepage, masscec.com, since this is a program that communities apply to from the municipal government, you go under government and nonprofit, clean heating and cooling, and then these are the different technologies, but here's the HeatSmart Mass program. You apply now. This website will have information, RFP, all the attachments, information about the deadline, and then here is FAQ. So like I said, we'll post any answers by September 6th, but we've already started to post some FAQs based on initial questions we've gotten in. So definitely check this out as a resource. So that's the overview of the program. I'm going to pause just for a couple minutes here and take any initial questions we have about the actual RFP or the process. Although, like I said, we will have some time at the end for questions if we don't get to everything now before diving into the technologies. One question I see, just to reinforce, if a town isn't part of the Renewable Energy Trust, they do still qualify for this program, but they won't qualify for the standard Mass CEC rebates. So if towns that have a municipal light plant are looking to apply to this program, we ask that they offer their own incentive for these technologies to kind of make sure that there's a similar value proposition as if these towns were eligible for a Mass CEC rebate. We got a question about whether the program's only for 1 to 4 family residential homes or larger multifamily homes also eligible. The program is definitely targeting more of the 1 to 4 family range. I think based on our experience with Solarize, that's kind of a good replicable model that installers can offer standardized pricing for. But we are open to larger projects participating as part of the community, as long as the installer and the community are both kind of open to that option. We got another question of whether the HeatSmart Mass program will include pricing tiers like Solarize Mass. Right now we're thinking it won't, but that will be something that we'll work out in final detail when we have communities selected and we also have installers selected. So just as a little background, for Solarize, some of the campaigns will say if you get X many homes, the price is this, but if you get so many more homes, the price goes down. Right now we're thinking we'll work with installers just to kind of offer a fixed discounted price, but like I said, we'll work out the final details of that at the point where we select installers for each of these technologies. A next question is, where will there be one or multiple installers? This is really going to depend on whether the community wants to just do one technology or multiple technologies. So this will also be something, as a pilot, we'll be figuring out once we have communities selected and know which technologies they want to move forward with. We'll talk with them about whether it makes sense to file an RFP for just one or perhaps multiple installers that could work together in some kind of pre-arranged partnership. We got another question about how much does each town have to provide for their own incentives. I think this question might be asking if you weren't eligible for Mass CEC's rebate because your utility doesn't pay into the Renewable Energy Trust. What we've said, we got a question about that. It's on our FAQs already. What we said is, as long as your town, your utility offers some incentive for the technology you've selected, you would be eligible for the HeatSmart Mass program. But if it's less than Mass CEC's rebates, we'd want to see some kind of other factors why you think that this technology would have a particularly good value proposition in your town, such as low electricity prices or something along those lines. Just reading the questions here. Does the company who does the HVAC installation also need to do the energy audit? That's a great question. No. Our intention is that we would work with the communities that are selected to promote the Mass Save energy audits, or else the energy audits offered through their own utility. And then we'd work with a selected installer to offer clean heating and cooling technology. So it definitely wouldn't need to be the same contractor. And then we got a question about when in the timeline should teaming with other towns be solidified. We'd really like to see that solidified by the time that applications come in on September 15th. So at that point, we'd want to see, these towns are definitely working together and some discussion about how they intend to do that. So if that's something you're considering and feel like you want to talk to us about, please feel free to reach out individually, but we'd want to see that kind of locked down by the time you're applying on September 15th. And then one question about the program timeline. It says in the RFP that the deadline for installations is 1 year after contract signatures. And they were just asking about what contract that was. And it's really 1 year from when the customer signs the contract with the installer, that the installer, and they need to go ahead and do that installation to get the discounted HeatSmart pricing. I think that's all the questions I see for now. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the technologies. And like I said, if you think of other questions about HeatSmart as we're going along, type them in and we'll have some time at the end to get to them. All right, so the technologies we're going to talk about today are modern wood heat, cold climate air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and solar hot water. Starting with modern wood heat, also called central biomass. At a high level, what this is definitely not something like a fireplace or even a wood stove. This is much more like a fossil fuel boiler. So you would get a truck to pull up to your home, deliver wood pellets, much like your oil delivery truck might, and they'd be stored in a central storage bin in your home and then automatically fed into your boiler, which then heats up water and distributes that hot water either for your use for domestic hot water or for heating purposes. So here's some pictures of what that might look like. These aren't actually all in the same building, but just to kind of give you an idea of some of the steps I just described. On the left, you see a truck, and it looks kind of like I said, like an oil truck, but it's actually blowing pellets into the home, and they're going into, this one has kind of this collapsible cloth storage bin. Often we see them going into basements or garages, and then from there, those are automatically fed into the boiler on the right and combusted. We typically see homes needing 1 to 3 deliveries per heating season of pellets, and really very little maintenance. You might need to empty an ash bin once or twice a year, but it's very much like kind of your oil boiler once you have it installed. In terms of available incentives, if you're in an eligible utility territory, Mass CEC offers a rebate up to $12,000. That's on the books through 2020. There's also a heat loan offered through Mass Save, which this technology is eligible for, which is a 0% loan for up to 7 years for up to $25,000. And then most likely by the time that HeatSmart is actually launched and having community signups, there will be a third source of incentives, alternate energy credits that are a similar model to the renewable energy credits that solar PV has been eligible for. The regulations for exactly what those credits will look like and what the rules will be are currently out for public comment, and so those are being finalized now. Some benefits of going with this technology. Pellets have had stable prices if you look across the last few decades, whereas oil has fluctuated pretty wildly, doubling and halving in prices. So with pellets, you really know much more what you're getting into. In terms on the technical side, it's a pretty simple retrofit if you have hot water or hydronic heat. So if you have a boiler that's moving hot water through radiators, example like an oil boiler, it should be a pretty simple retrofit. Another benefit is this technology provides hot water in addition to providing your heat. Like I discussed earlier, it's very automated. So I know when I used to think about burning wood, it was putting a log into a wood stove, but this is really much simpler than that from your point of view, and only requires a few deliveries per year, similar to oil. Another benefit is the kind of heat local side of it, that by providing a market for low-grade wood from forests, it's supporting the economic viability of local forest land, which helps keep that land forested and also helps support local forestry jobs. What makes a good site? So this is something you as a homeowner might think about, but also for all of you that are representing towns, these are factors you might think, does this apply to homes in my community? So homes that use hot water distribution, so they have radiators. There are a couple furnace options available, but much more options available for technologies that are replacing radiators or that have a radiator distribution system. Or of course, new construction, you can build a distribution system to work well with biomass heating. You will require some space for the boiler or furnace, as well as for a thermal storage tank that's kind of like a hot water tank. And then the storage you saw in that photograph takes up some space, either in a basement or garage. And then in terms of payback for the homeowner, you're going to see the best payback for this technology if you're replacing either electric resistance heat or oil or propane heating. So moving on to air source heat pumps, at a very high level, any kind of heat pump works by moving heat from one area to another. So air source heat pumps, when they're in their heating mode, move heat from the outdoors to the indoors. And because they're just moving heat instead of creating it, they can generate 2 to 3 times more heat than the electricity they use in their compression cycle. So it's a great, very efficient way to create heat. This picture shows what these outdoor condensers and indoor evaporators might look like. This particular project has what we call single heads, where there's one outdoor unit to one indoor unit. So you can kind of see the matched pictures in this home. They have a bigger unit heating the main living space, a couple smaller for the bedrooms, and this is providing the main source of heat in their home. There are also technology options available, multi-heads, where you might have one outdoor condenser that can serve multiple indoor condensers if you have less space for outdoor condensers, or if you just prefer that look. One other note on kind of the air source terminology, you might have heard these technology referred to as ductless heat pumps or mini split heat pumps. We're calling it air source heat pumps here, but all of those things mean the same. Available incentives, if you're in a Mass CC eligible territory, we give rebates of $625 per unit up to $2,500. You can also get a Mass Save rebate. We know about each other's rebates and encourage you to take both of them. Those are $100 to $300 per indoor head, depending on the efficiency of the unit. And this technology is also eligible for the heat loan, 0% interest for up to 7 years. So some benefits of this technology: it can be deployed almost anywhere. It's great for retrofit applications that may not have ductwork. It's very flexible in that way. The single technology can provide both heating and cooling. So one advance that's been in the last 5 to 10 years is that these equipment is really well suited to heat throughout the winter in Massachusetts. And at the same time, it provides a good cooling solution, like I said, for homes that might not have ductwork. It's a great retrofit. And in the cooling mode, it can provide dehumidification as well as cooling. Another great piece of it is that you get the zonal control. So each of those indoor condensers can be controlled separately, turned off and on when you might be in a room, or else set to different set points if you have different comfort needs for a bedroom versus a living room. So that kind of flexibility is a great advantage. Some of the controls are pretty high tech now. If you go with certain options, you can kind of control it through your smartphone, like you might be able to with a Nest or a programmable thermostat you're familiar with. And then finally, this technology is less noisy than a typical heating or air conditioning system. So what makes a good site? Like I said, it is very flexible. It will require some amount of space for those outdoor units, somewhere to go, be mounted above the snow line, either on those brackets like you saw in the picture, or else wall mounted on a home. And then for indoor units, you need some kind of space, either on the wall or they can be floor mounted. There are options available with ductwork, but no ductwork required. Like for all these technologies, the best payback for air source heat pumps are going to come if you're replacing electric resistance, oil or propane heating. Another factor that can lead to a good payback is if you have lower than average electricity prices for whatever reason, either through your electric provider, or if your home has photovoltaic solar energy, and so you have access to cheap electricity from your own PV panels. And then one note here is to use air source heat pumps as your sole source of heating. We recommend that your home is well insulated and very energy efficient, which obviously applies great to new construction. And another advantage of putting this technology in new construction is that you can skip putting any kind of fossil fuel infrastructure in the home, whether that's a natural gas hookup or the infrastructure to deliver oil. You can just heat with a few air source heat pumps and run all the home on electricity. So moving on to ground source heat pumps, as their name implies, they take their energy from the ground. It's a very similar principle to air source heat pumps, but instead of exchanging heat with the outdoor air, you're exchanging it with the ground, which is very efficient because the ground below the frost line maintains a constant temperature of around 50 degrees in Massachusetts. So whether you're heating or cooling, it's kind of a great start to start from 50 degrees. And then there'll be a heat pump in your basement to bring it the rest of the way to meet your needs. These technologies show a couple different configurations that are possible. The one on the left is a closed loop system where you're circulating a fluid, and like the name implies, it's closed loop. You don't lose or gain any fluid. And then the one on the right shows more of a open loop situation, so you're actually drawing liquid into and out of wells. And then there's a third option, which is a horizontal loop system, which, like its name implies, is more horizontal. You don't need to drill these wells, but you do need a larger area to create kind of a loop field more horizontally. So here's some pictures from an example project. This one on the left shows what a drill rig might look for if you did need to drill the wells. It will definitely involve some disruption while you're putting in the system, but afterwards can be pretty minimal. You know, if you landscape over it, I've seen them kind of under a driveway. You know, in the end, once the drilling is done, the outdoor sides of this technology are pretty minimal to non-existent. And then what you do have is a heat pump in the basement. So the picture on the right shows what that unit in your basement might look like, and this is the unit that's doing the heating and the cooling for your home. Available incentives. Again, if you're in Mass DEC eligible territory, we offer rebates up to $12,500. This technology is also eligible for the heat loan. It is exempt from sales tax, which is a 6.25% discount, and then will be eligible for the alternate energy credits once those regulations and rules are finalized. Benefits of this technology, like I said, it's the most efficient heating and cooling technology, which can really maximize your greenhouse gas savings. And if you are trying to power that from a PV array, you can use a smaller array to offset the energy you'll need to run it. Like air source heat pumps, you get a single unit providing both heating and cooling, as well as dehumidification in the summer. Ground source heat pumps also have an option to add a domestic hot water component to the system. Like the air source heat pumps, they have very intelligent controls where you can kind of, through your smartphone, be saying, oh, I'm coming home, I want to cool this room. If you do go with a vertical well that's creating an asset, where you can take and dump heat for the next 50 to, we've heard, up to 100 plus years. So you're really creating kind of a very long-term asset for your home. And then once it's installed, like I said, there's really minimal signs of outdoor disruption, no outside equipment, which can be great for historical buildings, and no outside noise. So what makes a good site for a ground source heat pump? On the inside of the home, we typically see these with forced air distribution or ductwork. There are some hydronic options, but most often see it paired with homes that have existing ductwork or else new construction. This is great for homeowners who are seeking the greatest greenhouse gas emissions reductions and can afford, potentially with the help of the heat loan, that high upfront cost, and get that offset by long-term energy cost savings. Like all the technologies we're talking about today, you see the best payback versus electric resistance, oil or propane, or like with the air source heat pumps, if your home has lower access to lower cost electricity. And then in terms of the outdoor space, we've talked about this a little bit, but for the indoor, you will need somewhere for your indoor heat pump, typically a basement, the same way you'd need for your furnace. And for a vertical loop system, like we saw at the beginning, you need a smaller footprint, maybe 1 to 3 wells, something that could potentially fit under a driveway. Open loop system, you need to have access to underground well or aquifer on your property. And then the horizontal loop is less drilling, but does require a pretty large outdoor area, say maybe typically 150 by 150 feet. So moving on to our last technology for this webinar, solar hot water. This technology relies on circulating a fluid up to the roof that absorbs the sun's radiant energy to heat it up and provide heating for your domestic hot water. This technology can provide 50 to typically see up to 80% of your home's hot water needs. These are a couple example projects. Typically you need 2 to 3 collectors, so you can see in the picture in the bottom right, it can either be paired with a PV system, or in the other 2 pictures, maybe they can go, these 2 to 3 collectors could go somewhere you couldn't fit a whole PV array, but could just fit the 2 to 3 hot water collectors. Available incentives, Mass EC offers rebates up to $4,500. For this technology, there's also a federal tax credit up to 30% of the cost of the system, as well as a state tax credit up to $1,000 or 10% of the cost of the system. And this technology is also eligible for that same heat loan that I've been mentioning and the alternate energy credits once those regulations are finalized. So what are the benefits of this technology? Like I said when showing the pictures, it's a great option for homes that don't have enough roof area necessarily for a whole PV array, because you need fewer to meet the hot water load, and because these collectors are more efficient in just creating heat, so they can be up to 70–75% efficient versus the PV panels, which create electricity. And then for homes that do have a lot of roof space, it can be great to serve both your electricity and your hot water needs. With your roof, we say go solar all the way, and offer a $500 adder for combining those 2 technologies. Solar hot water, unlike solar photovoltaics, don't need to go through any interconnection request with your utility company because you're not connecting to the electric grid. You're just providing heat for your hot water tank. And it can integrate either with your existing hot water heater or via standalone system with its own built-in backup. So what makes a good site? Just in terms of space needs, you need that space for collectors, either on a roof with a structure capable of supporting the collectors, or they could be ground mounted or pole mounted. And then you need space in your basement for the storage tank. Ideally, southern exposure, east or west is possible. Southern is ideal. These collectors are a little more tolerant of shade than PV, but you still want to be getting at least 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day, so pretty good solar access. And then like all the technologies, best payback versus electric resistance, oil or propane heating. And this graph just kind of illustrates as a very hypothetical situation where you might start to see the payback on your system if you have those different backup fuel types. So that's a quick overview of all the technologies. I'm going to open it up to questions again. And just give me a minute here to go through the questions. We got a question about whether any communities have participated in this yet. And that's a great question. Like I said, there was one community in New York State that did it. And then we've had a couple communities here in Massachusetts that have done similar campaigns, maybe for just one or more of these technologies on their own already, which we're excited to see that enthusiasm. This HeatSmart Mass pilot with the application on September 15th will be the first time Mass CEC is running or participating in a heating program like this. So we're excited to try our hand at it and get involved. There's a question of what's the advantage to participate in this program versus going through a rebate program through the utilities such as Eversource. And the idea is that participants would do both. So we definitely expect that the communities and individuals that participate in the HeatSmart Mass program will still get the rebates to help drive down the cost, but at the same time, they'll be getting a discounted price from a known embedded installer that's going through this group purchasing model. So that will kind of be a both question. Then we have a question about on the biomass or modern wood heating, a question about the carbon implications of loss of carbon sequestration through taking out wood for pellet extraction. There's a lot of different kind of information and analyses out there about the greenhouse gas benefits of burning wood instead of fossil fuels. And there's some great work being done in those alternate portfolio standards that I mentioned to make sure that any biomass projects that states reporting do achieve a 50% reduction in life cycle greenhouse gas emissions over fossil fuels through both requiring the fossil fuel providers to demonstrate that the wood they're using is from sustainable sources, as well as requiring that the wood burning technologies used are highly efficient. So the kind of technologies Mass CEC is supporting have very strict emissions and efficiency requirements that helps guarantee that you do see kind of a carbon beneficial technology. Then we have a question about whether central heat pumps are included or is this limited to mini splits. That's a great question. The RFP is written to say that that technologies have to be eligible for Mass CEC's rebate to participate in this program. Right now, Mass CEC is mostly supporting mini split technologies just because they do tend to have higher efficiencies because there's not a little bit of energy loss through the ductwork. We have a couple central heat pumps options included, so those are definitely open for the program. I'd say if you have more specific questions about central heat pumps, please reach out and discuss those with us. And then a question about still in air source heat pumps about how cost effective they are if the home already has a central fossil fuel based heating system, so you're mostly using it for AC, and then using it for supplemental heat. And the answer to that question is really going to vary based on the specifics of your home, but kind of as a rule of thumb and based on in-field analysis that Mass Save has done, we see the kind of the best cost effectiveness and operational cost savings for these technologies if you're replacing those fuels that I've been mentioning, electric resistance and oil heat and propane. Right now, typically for a natural gas system, we're seeing that tends to be more cost-effective heating option if you already have that in your home. But like I said, that can really vary, home to home based on the situation of your boiler or furnace and how you might use the home. So it's a complicated question, but kind of those high cost heating fuels are where you probably see the best operational cost savings. We'll comment about the audio here. I apologize if there have been any issues. I'll try and make sure I'm speaking up. A question, what is the life expectancy of the air source heat pump system? That can also vary based on the equipment, but I'd say typically around 15 years. And then another question about my statement that homes, we recommend homes should be well insulated and energy efficient. If you're really relying on the air source heat pump as your sole source of heating, and kind of asking if there was a cutoff point where, based on the age of the home, that they wouldn't be eligible for a whole home standalone air source heat pump heating system. There's definitely no cutoff in terms of age. We've seen homes, old homes that are retrofitted and made very tight, and then they can be candidates for whole home air source heat pump system. And this would be another question that's probably a good discussion with your installer about whether your home is a good candidate for taking out your backup system or not. But definitely there's no age cutoff. Even if you have an old home, if you've done some efficiency retrofits, something worth discussing. Just a question if we'll make a copy of the presentation available. We will post this presentation on the website in a day or two. So that will be available. And then we have a question of whether air-to-water heat pump hot water systems are included. Right now, the only technologies that are eligible for Mass CEC's rebates are air-to-air systems. So I guess we just haven't seen many air-to-water kind of commercially being sold in this area. So we're not opposed to the idea, we just haven't really seen a lot of those products out there. A question on the solar hot water systems. If PV was already installed at a previous time, do you still get the adder, the $500 adder for adding a solar hot water system, or do they need to be installed together? No, if it was already installed, however long ago, you still can get that adder as long as the site has both kinds of solar. And then we have a question about whether air source heat pump installations require a full heating backup system, either keeping the fossil fuel in place or some kind of electric backup. And going back to my answer from before, that will really kind of depend on the individual situation in your home, whether you want to keep a backup or need to keep a backup of your old fossil fuel system. Something to discuss with your installer, whether you can kind of take out that backup. If you do have it existing, you might want to, keep it in for a year or two as a safety blanket, see how it goes. Once you really get the comfort with the heat pump, air source heat pumps. But that conversation will really be pretty specific to your home and kind of the situation that's there. And then a question about whether Mass CEC rebates for air source heat pumps, or this could also be applied to any of the other technologies, are available to homeowners that have electric resistance heating, even if they're served by a municipal light plant that doesn't contribute to the Renewable Energy Trust. Unfortunately, Mass CEC rebates are still only going to be available to communities that do contribute to the Renewable Energy Trust. So for any other communities that might be served by a municipal light plant and want to participate in this HeatSmart Mass program, we'd be looking for them, those municipal light plants, to contribute some kind of incentive for those technologies. This is a great question. Do you recommend pairing any particular technologies for the HeatSmart Mass program? That's definitely something we are figuring out with all of you in this pilot program. So we're I don't want to give too definitive an answer here, because we're kind of looking for what pairings make sense to you based on your community. Off the top of my head, the two different heat pump technologies could make some sense together. There's some installers that do both, and just the similarities in the technologies could be a good pairing. Solar hot water with biomass could be a nice complement. If you're using the solar hot water in the summer, then you can turn the biomass heating system off and just rely on the solar system to give your hot water in the summer, and then in the winter you get a little boost from the biomass system. But really, any of these technologies might be applicable for the same community, and so we're kind of interested to see what technologies make sense to you and your community. Then we have a question about whether utilities could provide information about who in the city or town heats with electricity, since those customers will get the best payback, as I keep saying. We're definitely going to work with the selected communities to help target customers that do heat with high-cost heating fuels. At this point, I can't guarantee that we'll have access to that utility data, but we will work to figure out kind of geographically, ways to target those customers if we don't necessarily have access to utility data. And then another question about municipal light plant communities and the rebates they would offer. So the question is whether I'm saying that communities must match incentives offered by Mass CEC. And just to clarify, what we said in our kind of written answer to this on the website is that if a municipal light plant community wants to apply, we want to see that they offer no-cost home energy audits, and that they offer at least some incentive for the technology that they are applying for. So that's kind of our minimum requirement to apply for the HeatSmart Mass pilot. And then we added a little additional statement that if the incentive your MLP offers is lower than Mass CEC's incentive, we'd be looking for some other factors that you might propose, why you think that this technology would still have a good value proposition in your community. But at a baseline, we want to see no-cost home energy audits and at least some incentive for the technologies that you're proposing. The question is, another question, after the pilot program, how long until other towns will be able to participate? We don't know for sure, but we do have funding to continue this HeatSmart Mass program beyond the pilot. So, I think one likely scenario is that probably this time next year, we'd be looking to do kind of a next round of this program. Like I said, we don't know for sure. We'll kind of see how the pilot goes and the lessons learned from that. But we do anticipate that in some form we'll be running this program again, and that if your town's not able to apply this time, or if you're not selected for this pilot round, there will be other opportunities to participate. Then there's a question, will air source heat pumps not be eligible for the alternative energy credit? That's a sharp observation. I did leave that off of the slide because that's going to, well, as I said, all those regulations are out for public comment right now. They're in draft form, so I really don't know what the final form will look like. But I left that incentive off the air source heat pump slide because as they're drafted currently, there's some extra rules about how the air source heat pump needs to provide all or most of the home's heating, whereas we often see these technologies applied on a supplemental basis. So the answer is it's not known for sure yet. These technologies may be eligible for alternative energy credits based on how the regulations end up, and then also the specific situation of your home. Then a question on solar hot water is, would you need a solar hot water tank that also works off of a boiler, or a separate system that's just for solar hot water? And there's kind of two options to solar hot water. You can either set it up where you have, you're probably going to want kind of a special tank for the solar hot water system, but it can either feed into your existing hot water tank that's maybe connected to your boiler, or it's electric hot water tank. So you can either connect your solar hot water tank to your regular tank, or the solar hot water tank itself can include some kind of backup element, either an electric backup element in the tank or a connection to your boiler directly into that solar tank. So there's two ways it can go based on, again, kind of specifics of your home, what condition your existing hot water tank is in, and what your usage patterns are going to be. And then there's a question about which, I mentioned that a couple Massachusetts communities have done HeatSmart-like programs with some of these technologies so that other towns can learn from their experiences. I don't want to put them on the spot, but I think these are all public campaigns. I know for sure that the town of Northampton, Massachusetts, as well as Somerville, are in the process of kind of launching a HeatSmart-like campaign for air source heat pumps. I believe that Boston may be considering a similar campaign. So, like I said, these programs aren't run through us, but I think those towns are kind of exploring this model for air source heat pumps currently. Then a question about air source heat pumps. Is there any worry about the refrigerant as an HFC? I think this question is asking the refrigerant that's used to move the heat from indoors to outdoors, or vice versa for air source heat pump, can itself be a global a greenhouse gas if it's leached to the atmosphere? So there's definitely some concern about that. The refrigerants have gotten a lot better, I guess, in terms of their greenhouse gas impacts, but also in terms of their ozone impacts. So they've gotten a lot better on that front. But Mass EEC does work through our rebate program, and will certainly work through HeatSmart Mass to make sure installers are practicing the proper installation techniques and make sure that none of that refrigerant is getting leaked. So we think as long as installers are following the best practices, it shouldn't be an issue. And then a question, can someone use their own wood source? So right now, the only modern wood heating technologies that are eligible for Mass EEC rebates are pellet boilers. is in one of our FAQs we just posted on the website today. Since pellet fuel is kind of a processed and refined wood fuel, it wouldn't be something that you could produce yourself. You would need to be buying it. And then what the answer said is we are open to wood chip boilers, but right now there's no wood chip boilers that we know of that have gone through some recent federal testing requirements. So if that were to happen, those wood chip technologies could be eligible, and they met our efficiency and emissions requirements. Wood chip technologies could be eligible for our program, and then those wood chips could potentially be sourced from the property as long as they met some other requirements about kind of the fuel quality and sustainability. Then there's a question about whether there's a trigger for requiring insulation or air sealing before installing a renewable heating or cooling system. We definitely recommend this as best practice for any of the technologies that we're talking about today. I guess at least so for the solar hot water, since it's hot water, not heating, but for any of the heating technologies, we think it would be really beneficial to you as a customer to have done any insulation or air sealing, so that when you get this new heating technology, you don't need to pay for extra capacity because you've already reduced the load on your home. So you can buy kind of a smaller, more efficient unit for less cost to you. The program won't have requirements beyond that homeowners have at least had the energy audit and learned about the opportunities in their home for insulation and air sealing. But we will do kind of an education piece around that at the selected communities for the benefits of moving forward with the insulation and air sealing. And then there's a question whether seasonal residents would be eligible to participate, if it's a second home, for instance. For the Mass CEC rebates, second homes can be eligible for our rebates, but we do require that the homes are occupied throughout the winter. So if it's a second home, but you're using it throughout the year or else renting it out throughout the year, that would be eligible for a Mass CEC rebate. Then there's a question about kind of heat pumps that run on electricity, whether there's a question about too much demand on the electric grid when everyone's using heat pumps. That's a great question. I'd say at this point in the grid, that's not, we're not at the place of having to worry about that, but definitely in the long term, if more heating is electrified, it's something to keep an eye on. So something that CEC and our partner agencies are kind of, thinking about and discussing. But right now, we're kind of not at we shouldn't be at a pinch point for that yet. Then there's a question about whether ground source heat pumps, are ground source heat pumps typically central heat pumps? That's a good clarification. I was speaking earlier in the presentation about how Mass CEC currently doesn't support too many central air source heat pumps, but it's a great clarification that ground source heat pump systems are central heat pumps. So if you're looking for a central whole home solution, ground source heat pumps can be a great way to go. We have a question about an order of magnitude cost estimate for the average household installation for each of these technologies. I'm going to hold off on this one. I think it's a great question. I'm going to make sure I have kind of our latest program data and not just give the estimates off the top of my head. But if you kind of keep an eye on that FAQ section I pointed you to earlier, I will post that data just so everyone can get a sense of the average household installation cost. Then there's a question about heat pumps as renewable thermal technologies, I think specifically around the word renewable. Why are we calling these renewable? Is it about the strategic electrification or the fact that heat pumps move air instead of the old combustion systems? And I think it's both of those, but related to each other. For me, why I look at heat pumps as kind of an exciting clean heating solution and hopefully someday fully renewable is I think they're a great option for heating and cooling homes that can potentially be done without greenhouse gas emissions. So they do require electricity, which currently will have some fossil fuel emissions to produce that electricity with our grid mix in New England. Already based on our current grid mix and the efficiency of these systems, they're going to have less greenhouse gas emissions than a fossil fuel system, even natural gas. But certainly looking into the future as our state and regional electric grid goes to more and more renewable energy, the greenhouse gas implications of these heat pumps is just going to get better and better. So I think in the long term, I look at these as a way of kind of decarbonizing heating, which as we talked about, is such a huge load in the average Massachusetts home. Then a question about whether the HeatSmart program will incentivize both whole home heating replacements and supplemental or just whole home. At this time, we are thinking that the discount would be open to homes that were looking for just a supplemental heating source, but definitely as part of the program, we'll want to make sure there's some good education and technical resources for homes that are considering whole home options, because we think those have a lot of benefit and for the greenhouse gas implications and also just for the convenience of the customer. Then there's a question, is there any CEC funding for the HeatSmart coach? It's really a volunteer position, so we are really counting on the goodness of people's hearts and their dedication to this issue to put in volunteer time. Like I said at the beginning, we'll have a marketing grant of up to $9,000 per community. I believe the RFP says that up to $1,000 of that could go as kind of a stipend for the HeatSmart coach if that was what the participating community wanted to do. So there is that option, but by and large, in the Solarize program and looking forward to the HeatSmart program, these are very dependent on enthusiastic volunteers. And then kind of a follow-up question to that is, do most municipalities fund a position? And if so, how much does it cost? And I would say, based on our Solarize experience, that these are really volunteers. We do ask, there's also a municipal rep, so kind of an existing municipal employee who's going to commit to assist in this campaign. So that would be kind of an existing paid position. But then we generally see volunteers kind of stepping up to do the bulk of the outreach and education. And then another question about whether this is for homeowners or commercial facilities. The concentration of the HeatSmart program will really be for homeowners. We think it can also apply to small commercial. In the experience with Solarize, commercial projects just tend to have a longer contracting process that might not fit into kind of a condensed campaign like the HeatSmart campaign. So that's why we say it's really mainly targeted for residential. And then a question about selecting installers. Will it be like Solarize, where a few different installers per technology will submit per community, And then with Mass CEC's help and our consultants' help, communities will evaluate and pick an installer. Yes, that will be the model for this, with the kind of detail that we're going to be working out in the pilot of how many different installers end up going for each HeatSmart community, whether it's just one or if there's multiple technologies, and it's more of a partnership of installers. Do you know how many installers there are for each technology that is eligible for this HeatSmart program? That's a great question. We do think that there is coverage for the state for all these technologies, but some of them have more installers than others. So that's something we'll be working on our end to make sure that there's a good amount of installers who apply. That will look like us doing outreach to industry and installers and make sure that we're setting up a program that they're interested in, so it can be kind of a win-win for the communities and the installers. And then there's a question about the municipal light plants, whether they also have to match Mass CEC's income-based adders. So something I didn't talk about today is that Mass CEC does offer enhanced incentives to households that are below 120% of state median income. So that's obviously most households in the state get some enhanced incentive. That's not necessarily something we will be requiring that municipal light plants match, but the RFP does say that one factor we'll be looking at in the applications is communities that either have higher concentration of low and moderate income households and or kind of a targeted outreach to make sure that this program is reaching those communities and the benefit is available to those households if they want to participate. So short answer, no, you don't have to match our income-based rebate adders, but it is something that we're hoping communities will be interested in promoting adoption in low and moderate income households. Then a question about whether there's a minimum or targeted number of households we're hoping for in the pilot communities. Our minimum in the RFP is just that a participating community has to have 1,000 owner-occupied households, and if that's not in one municipality, it can be through a partnership of multiple municipalities to kind of get to that minimum cutoff. And that's just so that there is the critical mass to kind of have this bulk purchasing program make sense. And then on the flip side, could a single municipality be a community? Definitely. You know, we welcome communities to apply in partnerships, but also communities can definitely apply on their own. And we've seen both models be successful for Solarize. And then a question about commercial scale heating technologies for multifamily buildings. Could those be eligible for this program? Like I said, our intention for the program is really to target moderate, typically maybe 1 to 4 unit buildings, maybe small commercial. If you feel like for your community, you're really interested in the multifamily applications and think there's a path forward for this kind of short contracting period, we'd definitely be open to having discussions with you about what your interest is and what that could look like. You know, I think the reason we've targeted the way we have is so that you could have the short contracting period that has worked well for Solarize. But this is a pilot, so you know, if you have another thought in your head, please reach out to us. And then we have a question about a recent iteration of Solarize Mass. In its current form, it's actually open to Solarize Mass Plus, which means that communities can do these kind of bulk purchasing campaigns for solar PV as well as one other technology. So there's currently communities that are doing solar PV and solar hot water, as well as a community that's doing solar PV and air source heat pumps. You could also do solar PV and electric vehicles through that Solarized Mass Plus program. It's a great program. I highly encourage everyone on this call to check it out if you're not already familiar with it. And the difference between that and HeatSmart is that this HeatSmart is just for the heating technology. So there wouldn't be that solar PV component of it for the HeatSmart Mass pilot. A question about how many applicant communities we expect to apply. We're really not sure. This is a pilot program, so we don't have anything to base it off of. We've had some good, strong interest in terms of people reaching out and asking questions, so we hope that translates into applications. But at this point, we're just not sure how many applications there are going to be. And then question about the number of owner-occupied households. I just mentioned that we're looking for at least 1,000 owner-occupied households. And the question is whether we're going by the 2010 census. I believe that is. The RFP has a link to census data where you can look up the number of owner-occupied households in your community. I believe that is based on 2010 census data. I'm not positive. It could be updated from some more recent community survey data that the census runs. But if for any reason you think the 2010 census data isn't applicable and you have some more recent data, we're definitely open to considering that. But I do think that kind of the baseline we'll look at will be the 2010 census data. And then the last question I have here is, do towns applying as a group need to submit in one application or multiple applications? And towns applying as a group would need to submit one application, but within their each town or municipality would need to have kind of a separate letter from a municipal representative of that town, as well as a head volunteer for that town. So it would be one joint application with a plan of how they're all going to work together. But we are looking for kind of a lead HeatSmart coach and municipal representative from each town to be kind of signing on to that application. So that's all the questions I have here. As you can see, this address, HeatSmart Mass at masscec.com. We are taking any other questions through August 30th, and we'll post answers no later than September 6th. We will be posting this webinar, both the slides as well as hopefully the recording of it. So if you want to refer back to it, you can check here. And then I would just thank everyone for joining us today and encourage you, please do reach out if you have any questions or just want to talk. And I know us here at Mass CEC are really excited to move forward with this pilot. So thanks everyone and have a great evening.